Okay, just out of curiosity, you guys can click, raise your hand or just kind of let me know what options are you guys working on? When I say that, and I'll show you in the degree catalog what that means. We have one degree in aviation. It's a Bachelor of Science in Aviation, but we have 4 different options. And the options are professional flight operations, aviation management, and maintenance management. So which one of those options are you guys planning to do?
More towards the flight operations one.
Okay. I'll give you kind of a rundown of what those mean, and also you really don't have to make your decision at this point. Since this is Admitted Spartan Day, most of you guys are coming in as first-time freshmen. So you're in high school now, finishing up, and you're going to start here in the fall, which is for us, fall is late August, like probably somewhere around August 24th. I'll have to look at the calendar to see that. You got a couple of chats popping up there. It looks like a bunch of you are doing professional flight, kind of an aviation management. So, okay, anyone doing maintenance management, just out of curiosity? Okay, that's not very attended usually. We keep it open. It's a pretty good 2+2 program for students doing the mechanic certificate at a community college and then transferring in. And the job market is so hot right now that it's really hard to get convince students to keep going to school when they can go get a job after they finish their associate's degree. So that's one that we don't see too many students in. So it's like primarily professional flight and some flight operations and a couple of aviation management folks. So we'll focus on those things. Let me share a screen with you. It's a PowerPoint slide. And welcome to Admitted Spartan Day. I'm sure that they spent a few minutes talking about stuff like that, about going in, doing advising for new student orientation. Did they mention any of those things? No? Okay. Then I'll mention it to you now. Just we'll stop the share for a second and we'll look at it and escape that out of the, hold on just a second here. Okay. Just as a matter of course, you guys are going to start getting all kinds of emails and messages. The ones to pay attention to are all of them really, but in particular, they're going to ask you to come and do a new student orientation. And that's usually spending a day at San Jose State. And at the end of that day, they're going to take you in for new student advising. And when you leave this session, I kind of think you'll have some notes on what you should be signing up for. And that means there's a couple of classes I want to make sure that you're taking. But on the new student orientations, when they release you to sign up for classes, the sooner you take the orientation, the better, because sometimes classes fill up. So when you start getting dates on them, take the ones in June, not the ones in August. And that's sign up for one as early as you can possibly make it. Don't wait on that one, please. Okay, so let's go back to sharing the screen and go back to the PowerPoint slides. So on that, we're going to do a couple of things today. Just talk about academic plans, what you have to do to get into what you're already in the aviation program, but what you have to do to get out of the aviation program is to finish it. And how you look and track your own progress. So we'll cover a couple of things. And one of the things that's going to be kind of vitally important for you is to know what classes to take. So I'm going to stop the share and open up a browser, share that, and then we'll go to a different tab. And I'm going to show you how to find your way into the SJSU Aviation website. So we'll share the browser. I'm going to open up a new tab. Actually, I'm on the Aviation and Technology website. You can Google SJSU AvTech, and let's see, this is the sjsu.edu webpage. If you open up the SJSU website and click search, click up in the search, don't use this is a Google search, that's external. The internal search is this one. So you click on that and it'll take you to SJSU search, and you can type Aviation and Technology. And that'll take you to our website. The reason I'm walking you there is I'm going to go through what you're supposed to do to get this degree. Some of you have different things done. You're coming out at different levels of progress. Some of you have taken AP classes. Some of you have even taken community college classes while you're a senior in high school. I'm going to click on under programs. I'm doing the drop down for programs, going to Bachelor of Science in Aviation. And I'm going to pull that up. And there's a bunch of information that's here. One of the things I want you to pay really close attention to are the 4-year plans. So let's open that up. And this doesn't mean you have to do it in 4 years. You could do it in 5 or 3, or even more than that. But these planners are here for you as a roadmap to help you through the program. If you're doing flight operations or aviation management, they're pretty similar up front, and then the classes start varying a little bit for the different degree programs. So there were a lot of professional flight students on, so I'll just pick that 4-year planner. And what that 4-year planner has is really an Excel spreadsheet, and it's a plan. It's not a locked-in thing that you have to do. So as a professional flight student, you should be taking these classes while you're going here. We're going to talk about American Studies in a few minutes. I would guide you to not take American Studies 1A in your first semester, but maybe something else. And also, if you're doing the professional flight program, I expect you to be flying, and that's deceiving. Even though the flight program, Aviation 3, is showing up in your second semester, you should be starting your flight training during your first semester while you're taking the ground school. And the point being that if you start doing your flight training, some of you guys are already working on it, so you know how long it takes to learn to fly. Of the 3 ratings that our students have to get to graduate, which is private pilot certificate, instrument rating, and commercial pilot certificate, personally, I think the private pilot certificate is the hardest. And the reason for that is when you're learning to fly, you're learning everything. You're learning how to start the airplane and taxi it, how to do radio communications, how to fly, literally how to take off and land and maneuver and navigate. The other ones, the follow-on ratings like the instrument rating, which would be Aviation 63, that's honing the skills that you learned as a private pilot. And then later on in life, you'll be doing the commercial pilot certificate. Oops, and it's highlighting funny, but it's this one. And that's honing some maneuvering skills and picking up some extra knowledge, but it's all based on this one. So this one is probably the most intense, and you'll be learning the most material. You'll be kind of trying to drink from a fire hose, if you will. And that's the private pilot certificate. So it takes longer than 1 semester to earn it. So what our instructors who teach that class would like you to do is start training in your fall semester or even over the summer before school starts, and then sign up for this class when it looks like you'll be able to finish by the end of the term. So the spring semester starts in late January and ends in May, and then you have the summer to follow it on. So if you can finish by the May of whatever year you're starting, which would be, that would be 2023 in this case, you're starting in the fall 22 term, that's when you should sign up for Aviation 3. And I also mentioned that some of you have taken AP courses. So if you took AP Calculus, you don't need to take Math 71. You should take something else. If you took AP History, you don't need to take American Studies. And there are some other ones like AP Statistics, and which meets the requirement that actually we don't put on the roadmap until a little bit later, but it knocks out the Business 90 class, which is in your 3rd semester. There are a couple of other ones that are AP courses that would meet a general ed requirement, and those are assessed by the admissions office. So I can't tell you which ones it will meet until after we get your records started. And that's when you're a matriculated student. That means you're attending San Jose State. We'll be able to look at all of your coursework. The good thing about this roadmap is it's a guideline, and it kind of gives you an idea of what you should be taking. The other thing is most of these classes, not all, have prerequisites. So if you look at page 2, you'll find out that there's an order that you're taking the classes in. So like Aviation 1 and 2 are the intro classes. Those have no prerequisites, but Aviation 3, the flight course, requires that you have taken Aviation 2, the ground school course. Our aerodynamics course, which is aircraft theory and design, the lower division one, requires some physics and math. And also these 3 classes require that you started physics, you have 2A done, and 2B has to be followed up with. So you can take 2B as a co-requisite, which means you can take it at the same time as these classes. You can always take it before. So that's a kind of a good roadmap. I'm going to stop that share and go back to our slide deck for a second. Got a couple new chats. Okay. Okay, good. So, okay, back to our advising notes. We looked at these academic plans. I want to take you into degree catalogs, but before we do that, I want to go down into a couple of places that you should be keeping an eye on as a student in our program or any program. So one of the things they're going to assign for you when you get accepted, you probably already have a student ID number. So you're going to sign into your 1.sjsu course, and that's what the screen will look like. So let me zoom around and put that in slideshow mode. Okay, so when you sign into 1.sjsu.edu, that's this captioning up there. Let me do display settings and get this squared away. And you'll find this slide deck, or this page that is, with all these tiles that have different places to go. A really important one is your MySJSU account. So when you click on that, it's going to ask you for your student ID number and your password. And when you first set up your password, it's going to make you set up a duo security device. So you'll have probably use your cell phone. It'll push out an approval that you actually signed in, and you'll have to accept that on your phone, and then it will let you log in. And the next page will look something, oops, I got this out of order. Something like this. And this will be your MySJSU page, and it's going to tell you what classes you're signed up for in the center, or it'll say you're not signed up for classes. It'll give you this drop-down menu, which becomes pretty important. It'll tell you that you have a hold or not on registering for classes. So like right now, you guys probably have a hold for advising, and they're going to clear that when you attend your orientation session. After that, we do that together. You and I do that usually as a group with other students. We go through your class selection and then clear the hold for you so you can register each time. There's also data here that tells you when you can start doing your enrollment. Every semester, you'll get an appointment time, and you can do it anytime after the appointment time, but not before. So when you start and get into this page, one of the things you'll probably be interested in is your My Progress report. And that's where you drop down this menu and go to My Progress. That's this one. So you'll highlight My Progress and then click on this little right pointing arrow. And it's going to take you to this report that looks like this. I pulled up one for a student. This is a really classic student. He started in the fall of 2013, and he's graduating right now. So he'll be out of here in May in about a month. So he's been on the 9-year plan. Hopefully you guys will be able to do it a little quicker than that, but it works. And this guy is, I hid the GPA in the name, but your report would have your student ID number, your name, your catalog, and yours will probably say 2022. And then it won't say anything here because this student applied to graduate. You don't apply to graduate until you're almost ready to graduate. But what's next on this report, as you scroll down in it, is a legend, and it'll have a checklist. So if you took the course and it's done, it'll have a little green check mark by it. If you're signed up for it and it's in progress, you'll have a yellow diamond. If you transferred it from somewhere, so if you took an AP class or a summer school class or went to a community college and took a class, then that little green arrow would indicate that you got credit brought in and for it. If you have a red square, it means it's not done yet. The red squares are usually limited to the top level reports. This thing has a level of indenture, and that means that at the class level, they don't say not done. They just leave it blank, or it's in progress or done. I'll show you what that looks like. As an example, this student is taking this class called Tech 198. It meets a general ed requirement, and it's in progress. And he was doing it last year, so this was an old screenshot. And that's what it looks like when the class is in progress. This student was doing the same requirement with a different class, and it's in progress. This student, and this is where I wanted to talk about one of the GE requirements. So we're going to break off here, and I wanted to stop for a second and ask you guys something. Are you still here?
Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't, going through this whole spiel and the Zoom had quit and no one was listening to it. So that's good. So let's take a different share for just a second. And I want to make sure you guys know what you're getting into. I'm sharing back to my browser, which is still on that sheet, but I'm going to open a new tab. And I'm going to go to the SJSU website, and that's our main school website. And there's everybody in masks, and we're still doing that for a little while longer. One of these days, we'll actually get to see each other face to face without a mask on. But for now, that's San Jose State. And on the San Jose State website, I'm going to go up into that search bar again. So I'm going to click on search. And one of the things, and I'm pointing this to you because it's something you should keep in the back of your mind. If you ever want to find something out about your degree, you have a question, do I have to take this class? Or can I take this class instead of that class? You're going to go to the degree catalog. And you'll get the SJSU's catalog as the first hit. So I'm going to select that. Okay, so there's the catalog, and saying my internet's a little slow, but I think it's still working. So this is the 2021 academic catalog. What I'm interested in is our department. So I'm going to go to this area over on the left where it says majors and programs and click that. And get majors and programs. This will list all of the degrees offered at San Jose State, every one of them from A to Z. We're in the A's, aviation, the last one. And if I select that, it brings up some information about your degree. And keep in mind, this catalog is your handbook for how to get through your degree. And if you started in 2021 or 2022, this is the guideline, and these are the requirements. The requirements can change, but yours don't. So if you stick with this catalog, everything is it. The degree in total is 120 units of coursework. And there's general ed, which is graduation requirements. There's some prep classes, and that's like math and science. And then there's the major requirements, and the specialization is things like professional flight or flight operations. And I'll show you what those mean. In the university requirements, and the reason I spun off into the catalog at this juncture from that PowerPoint slide was all of you guys are going to have to do a general ed curriculum as part of your degree. And that's areas A through F. And you'll notice that conspicuously B is missing. And that's because most of the math and science, B is math and science, and that is done by courses you take in your degree. You're required to take math, physics, a life science class, and there's a human factors class, Aviation 141, which is technically a biology class. And that meets all of the requirements except one. So I'll show you that. And then, but you'll have to take classes to meet all of these others. Those will show up in your degree progress report, and you'll be able to see, did I do it or did I not do it? The general ed part of it requires this thing called American institutions. They abbreviate it as US 1, 2, and 3. And what that means is that's US history, Constitution, and California government. And in our roadmap, we had recommended AMS 1A, 1B. We only recommended that for one reason, is that this program with 12 units of work covers a bunch of GE requirements, all of the US history, Constitution, and California government, plus social sciences and the arts and literature requirements. So those are areas C and D, and then also US 1, 2, and 3. The problem with AMS 1A and 1B is that they're 6-unit classes, and they meet every day in the middle of the day, and they block a lot of your schedule out. So it makes it very difficult to take a lot of other courses. So the good part is it meets a bunch of requirements. The bad part is it's really tough on your schedule. So as an alternative, a lot of our students opt to take these other classes, which are smaller 3-unit classes. And it could be things like African American studies, Asian American studies, Chicano studies, or US history and political science. And those pairs of classes are each 3 units each, so 6 units total. And they cover part of area D plus all of the US history requirements. So most of our students take those 2 of those classes as a way of getting through that part of the general ed requirement. This we'll talk about when you're closer to being a junior, most likely, the writing assessment. PE is not required for students in the College of Engineering. And then comes the prep. All aviation students, regardless of which degree option you're in, take all the same prep. So statistics, and we selected a business statistics class, and literally it's in the College of Business when we have a goal for that. But it's the same class and the same textbook and the same instructor as the math class, Stats 95, which is probability and statistics. We just chose the business version of it. And you'll see that we have a couple of areas where we did that. We're encouraging students to get a minor in business. We have a GE Area B2, that's a life science class. Most students were taking Biology 10, which is a life science class. A bunch of my students this semester they saw this class. It has a very cool name. They called it Age of Dinosaurs, and they took it thinking they'd have a really cool dinosaur class that was easy. It's not. It was a geology class, and it's hard, and they're studying a lot of rocks and fossil formations. They're getting through it, but the Age of Dinosaurs was not what they thought it was going to be. Everyone takes math. The Math 71 is calculus for business and aviation. You have to be good at algebra to take a calculus class. And if you took AP Calculus, that's Math 30, that's Calculus 1. Engineers take a Calculus 1, 2, and 3. Those are much harder classes, by the way. Don't be put off by the number. The Math 30 is not an easier class than Math 71. But if you took the AP Cal class, and you got credit for Math 30, you're done. We accept that. Every student takes a financial accounting class. That's another business title. Every student, and if you guys are coming in cold, it's Physics 2A and 2B. I have a lot of transfer students who are in the engineering department, and they're switching from aerospace engineering to aviation, and they took engineering physics, which are 50 and 51. We accept it. It's no problem. You don't have to do that, though. 2A and 2B is our requirement. And then comes the major requirements. This is core. Everybody takes all of these classes. I'm going to point out something to you. The course numbers. If you look at a course number and it's 100 or higher, that's an upper division class. That means juniors and seniors. If the number is below 100, that's lower division, and freshmen and sophomores can take those classes. So in the core, you'll take Aviation 78 probably kind of early on. It might not be your first semester, but it could be your second semester. In the specialized courses, there's the 43 units, and here's the different options. And this is flight operations and professional flight and aviation management. I'm not going to cover the maintenance management is below, but no one had mentioned that we're in that. Is that still the case? Did anyone new sign in that's doing maintenance management? Okay, then we'll just cover the 3. If you're doing flight ops, okay, you'll notice this set of classes. And I'm going to roll down to the professional flight for a second. In professional flight, You'll notice there's a bunch of classes they're sort of paired together. It might not be apparent. Aviation 2 and 3 is the private pilot ground school and flight course. 62 and 63 is the instrument rating ground school course and flight course. And then 112 and 113 is the commercial pilot ground school course and flight course. So professional flight requires all of those. Flight operations is a nearly identical program, but it leaves out the flight training. So you're not required to get those ratings to get the flight operations program. And to make up for those units, there's a couple more aviation management courses in there, this one and one of these courses. So they are very, very similar programs. And many of the students who are doing, I'll quit rolling around here, doing flight operations are actually working towards a goal as being a pilot, but they're waiting to finish their degree before they start doing the flight training. I will tell you that for the professional flight students, it's kind of a daunting task to do a college degree and learn to fly at the same time. So, and you can do it. You just have to be really careful about time management and how much coursework you take. So I'm going to go to we're sharing a browser now. I'm going to scroll back to one of the tabs that was the 4-year plan for aviation and technology. And if we look at the one for professional flight and open that back up, let me give you some guidelines. This roadmap is recommending 15 units. That's a lot if you're learning to fly. And I mentioned you should be learning to fly while you're doing this semester. I would rather have you take 12 units and then start flying and then take a summer school class during the summer after this year one. And you can do that either at state or at a community college near where you live and keep your unit count level, but take a slightly lighter load. And the reason I recommend that is if you're flying, I want you to fly 3 times a week minimum. 4 would be better if you can get your instructor to sign up for that. It's a busy time. But when you think about leaving our campus, going over to the airport, doing a flight lesson, and then coming back, you'll probably kill off about 3 or 4 hours when you do that. And if you're trying to mix that in with a bunch of difficult classes, then it's going to be hard for you. So I would recommend lightening your load and doing a summer school class. That's just me. And that is what I would recommend on that. Got a chat pop up. Yeah, that was from my question earlier. Are you guys still here? So since that was 5-10 minutes ago, are you guys still here?
Yep.
Good.
Still here.
Okay. There's actually a couple more students on here than when we started. So we had some late joiners. I hope you didn't miss too much. But I'll give you an out for that. So let me share back to the slideshow. Okay. No matter how you do it, Zoom gets in the way of the controls for whatever you're trying to present. So we were looking at, let me back up a couple slides just to remind you where you were. We were looking at your My Progress report, and the report screenshots that I'm showing you are from students who are pretty well along. Like this guy is ready to graduate. This guy was taking an upper division GE class, which means he's a junior or senior. So was this guy. This student is on the long haul also. This is my 2013 starter student. This student met the U.S. History, Constitution, and California governments, that's US 1, 2, and 3, by taking Asian American Studies 33A and B. And he's done with that. He took one of them in 2014 and one in 2018. I'm not sure what you guys were doing in 2014, but this guy was here at San Jose State taking a U.S. history class. And it's that pair that got him through these areas. So it covered 2 of the area D requirements and all of the history requirements, but it does it with 3 unit classes, and you'll have to take that other area D class, and you'll have to take the area C classes. So it'll end up being probably 15 units instead of 12, but that's an option to doing those AMS 1A and 1B classes. This student did, this is what it looks like when you collapse the report. You click collapse all and it rolls everything up and gives you the legend. And this particular student has a red square, not done with all the units, so it needs a couple more units. GPA is in progress. That means his GPA is good, but he's not done yet. He is done with the US history requirements, and he's done with his prep classes, but he hasn't met the major requirements yet. And if you clicked on expand all, you could blow up that report and see what was going on in each of the areas. So like this student, who is also a long hauler, has finished all the aviation classes for, this was the flight operations program, and did everything except for the one class, which is in progress. So that's our air traffic control class. So that's just an example of what the report would look like. If you haven't done that, so your reports, if you open yours today, it's going to have nothing checked off because you haven't finished any of those requirements yet. So it just kind of shows you where you're starting and what you have left to do. And this is what it looks like when you have a requirement that's not met yet. It's just there, but it's blank. And like this one in flight operations, take one of the following classes. And then there are elective requirements also, which means in flight operations, this has changed a little bit. It's actually 7 units now, but there's a list of classes, and there's actually more than are shown here. You can click, this is just a screenshot, so you can click view all and get the entire list. And when you're taking the flight operations program, you have to take a couple of extra classes to get rounded out in your aviation education. If you're in the professional flight option, there would only be room for one area or one elective unit, and because you're so busy with the flight courses and they take more units, that does not leave a bunch of elective units open for you. Okay, last thing, not really the last thing, next to last thing. I'm your advisor. That's my cell phone number. That's my personal cell number. I give it out. I hope you'll be a little bit respectful and try to stay away from weekends. And call on weekdays. During the day is great. And what happens, and the reason I give this out is right now, every year, and I'll show you what it'll look like in that every semester, that is, not every year, every student gets this thing called a registration hold placed on their account. And when you log into my SGSU, it'll say that major advising hold. That doesn't mean you did anything wrong. They do that to every student in the university every term, and you have to see your advisor to get the hold cleared. For you guys, that's me. So right about now, we're doing that, and I get hundreds of emails every day with little questions like, do I need this class? Can I take that class to meet this requirement? And the email comes in at such a ferocious rate that I tell students, just call me and ask me the question, use that number, and then I can answer that question for you. Really easy. If we need to log in and start a Zoom session to do a little one-on-one advising, and as that's usually pretty important for graduating seniors that they're closing in on it, we want to make sure that they've done everything. So that's what you do, is just give me a quick call and I can answer those questions. Some of the students are doing, I mentioned in the degree progress report when we were going through it and the catalog, we used a bunch of business titles to meet some of our requirements. Example was our stats class. We wanted probability and statistics, so we used a business class. In one of the upper division general ed requirements, it's an ethics requirement. Every College of Engineering student takes an ethics class. We use business ethics. So at the end of the day, when you're done doing all of the degree requirements for aviation, you'll have taken 3 business classes. You can get a minor in business by taking 2 more classes. And so some students do that. If you're doing aviation management, you're required to do that. But minor in business, that's a College of Business deal. And you'll talk to Elaine Lee at the Jack Holland Student Success Center, and she's your point of contact there. If you're doing any other kind of advising that, and engineering students go to the Engineering Student Success Center, you probably met with those guys earlier this morning. Did you guys have that session already?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, how'd it go?
it was pretty informative, but it mostly covered majors that were outside of aviation. So
Okay. So was that enough information for you guys in the last hour? Did I just fire hose you with so much data that you're feeling like you should go away right now? Go take a nap or something?
there's definitely a lot of good information in this one. So
Okay. So the biggest takeaway, so I have a question. Do you have any recommendations for the flight training programs? Yeah. Let me pull that up for you too. So there's a couple of things. Let's go back to this PowerPoint slide show. We were on this screen. The flight courses are taught by Wendy Mora. Actually, Wendy and her husband are grads from the program who are both airline pilots, and they decided they wanted to try to give back a little bit. So they're teaching some courses for us. And Wendy stepped up to do the flight courses. Those programs are kind of unique. They're actually, as far as the university is concerned, they're treated like an independent studies class. So you sign up for Aviation 3 or 63 or 113, and then you go to the airport and take flight lessons from one of the flight schools. And then you come back to Wendy and say, here's my certificate, I passed my private pilot check ride, and she gives you credit for Aviation 3 or instrument check ride for Aviation 63 and so on. So she meets a couple times during the semester, but it's not like a class where you're going in to learn at the class. You're learning at the airport. So Wendy is your best source of information for where you are and how you should move forward. And the reason I'm saying that is under normal times, my recommendation would be, yeah, go out to Reed Hillview. We have 2 flight schools that we work with. One of those is Tradewinds Aviation, and one is Squadron 2. Somewhere in the aviation program, aviation technology website, there's a link that goes to the flight training information, and it lists those 2 schools. I'll have to grope around in our website and find it. The problem is we just revitalized that website and went through it, and some of the stuff got located in different areas. So I'm not sure what tab to go to, but it's there. But a lot of students were held off by COVID. And when COVID first broke out a couple of years ago, March of 2019, I guess it was, we thought it was going to be, we'd be gone for 3 weeks or so. And that lasted a little bit longer than that. And one of the guys that was teaching the flight courses, the students were all at home, wherever that is, not learning to fly at Reed Hillview Airport. And at some point, they said, you know what, you should probably go out to your local airport and continue your flight lessons. So there are a couple of different schemes for training. One of them, and they're both under the federal aviation regulations, and they're different. Those are abbreviated the FARs, FAR Part 61 and FAR Part 141. Our mainstream program is Part 141, and that's not every school. So the 2 schools that we use are Part 141 schools, and those are accelerated training programs. So they're able to get you through a little bit faster. But when all these students were at home, not attending classes at San Jose State, doing everything by Zoom, we finally started telling them, it's like, go out and start learning. And they were in Part 61 programs. The 2 don't mesh well, so you don't get good credit at the 141 school by showing up with training in a Part 61 program. So we have students in all different stages of training that are showing up. And what I really recommend is that you talk to Wendy about what is your best path forward for getting done with your training. And if in some cases, if you're well along and you're doing Part 61 training, you should just keep doing that. If you're brand new and you haven't started yet, then you should definitely do the 141 program within our program. And she can show you how to make that decision. And so it's definitely a good contact. So you guys should capture this screen and email Wendy, and she'll send you her phone number. You can talk to her about it, or you can call me and discuss it further. I think I had yeah, this screen, the whole, when you're done with your first semester, as you're closing in on it, you're going to get this hold that pops up. I get some panic students. What did I do wrong? I have a hold. It's not wrong. You get it every semester, and we'll meet with you guys every semester to help you pick the roadmap for the next set of classes you're going to take. That's a different slide. So any questions about any of that? Got 2 chats popping up. Okay. Okay. Does all the building for instrument commercial need to be done through the affiliate schools? No, not really. So if you have some Part 61 hours, you can do that anywhere. And in general, flight training, you know, if you're doing it under Part 61 or Part 141, if you start somewhere and do a Part 61 private pilot certificate and then come to San Jose State and sign up for the 141 program, that works pretty well. If you've made any more progress than that, like if you finished your private and you're working on your instrument rating, then that's probably where you just stick with a Part 61 school, of which there are several at Reed Hillview Airport as well, and surrounding airports around the San Jose area too. So you're not locked in if you do that. So that means that it's basically not one size fits all message. You have to basically figure out where you are and get some support from either me or Wendy Mora to figure out what your next path forward is. Okay, getting some messages, but they're not chats. What's going on? Okay. I'm not able to see the messages, but let's see if I can pull them up. So, okay, I'm not. So you guys can also unmute and ask verbally if you have a question. So. You guys are just like my students in my classes when we do Zoom sessions. It's like pulling teeth or something to try to get them to unmute and come on. And I noticed Dr. Perez joined us. He's our department chair. Would you like to introduce yourself, Dr. Perez, and say hi to the students? So.
Yes. Good morning, Professor Neal. Thank you so much for your introduction, as well as informing the students. So could we see your faces, if you don't mind? Open up your camera. We want to see who you are. Don't be shy. Yeah, please. Yeah, let us know who you are. We want to get to know you. I am in the office on campus every day in the afternoons. You're welcome to stop by and talk to me. You heard a lot of information, Professor Neal, but there's a lot that you have to digest. A couple of things, Professor Neal, you might want to let the students know. When you said you can go to Reed Hillview, take the flight lessons, it's not free. They have to sign up and pay additional fee. Did you guys know that? Because taking the flight lessons is not cheap, and it's going to be out of your pocket. It's not included your tuition that you pay at San Jose State University. Are you clear on that subject? So as Professor Neal said, there are 2 flight schools that we consider as affiliate. So you must take your 2 flight classes, instrument and commercial, with these 2 schools. Otherwise, you're not going to be benefited by what we call restricted ATP. You guys know what the restricted ATP is? What is it, Christian? You're shaking your head. You said, yes, you understand.
I think I understand from what I read, but it's because we're taking the bachelor's program, we're allowed to get an ATP rating at 1,000 hours, I believe.
So, Professor Neal, do you want to comment on that, or should I say it?
Yeah, I'll go through that. So yes, if you finish our program and do your flight training within one of our 141 affiliates, and that means that it has to be the whole package, all the academic program at state and training with one of our affiliated schools, then you would be granted the ability to get a restricted ATP at a reduced number of hours. We're trying to make that 1,000 right now. And what that means is you're going to graduate and walk out of here with 2 pieces of paper. One will be your diploma, and one will be your certificate of completion of that restricted ATP program. And after you graduate, you'll probably build flight hours doing something like flight instructing somewhere or flying commercially for in a corporate level. And when you get to the 1,000 hour point, you'd be eligible to get a restricted airline transport pilot certificate. And so what that does is make it so you can do it at 1,000 rather than 1,500. So it accelerates the start of your career a little bit. So it's a pretty good opportunity, but it is just that it accelerates the career.
And it's a major savings because 500 hours times roughly $300. That's a lot of money that you can save.
So,
Professor Neal, there is another comment that we should probably tell the students. When Professor Neal says there is a hold on your registration, it means you need to come for advising. Even though Professor Neal advises you what courses to take, and he either remove the hold himself or he would ask our admin to remove it, you still might have problem. So at that time, you're going to contact me, Dr. Perez. I had my advising with Professor Neal. My hold's still there. You are very upset. There could be other reasons than academic hold because of advising. Maybe you did not pay your tuition from one semester, or there were some other issues that you are unable to register for your courses. We have another organization in the College of Engineering called Engineering Student Success Center. And I believe we have a number of people that you met this morning. Did you guys meet Sarah Gordon? Have you met Sarah Gordon? If you have not met those individuals, so check out our College of Engineering Student Success Center. They have a number of advisors. You may want to go and ask them. I'm unable to register for my classes. I had my advising with Professor Neal, but I still have problems. So these are the 2 comments that I wanted to make. I know Professor Neal was very thorough and really brought you from year 1 that you're starting next fall through probably year 4, 5, 6, maybe even year 9. But our goal is to help you get out of school in the most efficient way, because you staying at San Jose State University is not going to benefit us because we're not going to be benefited by the tuition you pay. Somebody else is going to be benefited. But our goal is to make sure that we help you achieve your goal as a graduate of the aviation program. Somebody asked a question regarding our ranking. Yes, we are #1 in California and on the West Coast of the United States. That means among private as well as public schools. I'm very proud of that achievement. Furthermore, we are ranked #4 nationally. There are 17 or 18 schools throughout the world, throughout the country, but we are #4. So you should be very proud to be a graduate of San Jose State University. Next time when you fly in a plane, ask the stewards or the flight attendants, who is the pilot? Where did he graduate? You're going to be surprised that they say, yeah, I went to San Jose State University. I graduated from SGSU. For a long time, I don't know why they did not want to expose themselves that they were graduates of San Jose State University. A good example here is Professor Neal is a graduate of San Jose State University. We have a number of faculty members that are graduates, and as he said, they want to come back and give back because they have gone through their program and they know what's needed out there. So we are very happy that you're here. So are there any non-professional flight students on this Zoom? Can you show a reaction by showing your hand that maybe you're in aviation management? So, okay, Ben, what is your interest? Which concentration or option are you in?
I'm going for the flight operations.
Okay, operations, very good. I just want to tell you this, close to 95% of the students that they come in to San Jose State University, they want to be pilots. They get into professional flight. But as time goes on, the fact that they needed money to take those flight classes, the fact that you need to, as Professor Neal said, you have to devote your time to go to the flight schools, get into an airplane, with an instructor to go and fly. People don't have the time. So they change to operations. By 3rd year, they come to me or Professor Neal say, I like to switch. The switching means I'm going to be taking a different set of courses. So if you really are determined to be a pilot, set your goal that you want to be a pilot. I just want to tell you, the flight classes, there are 3 of them. There are 2 flight schools. One charges like $11,000 per course. So it means if you're going to be going with Squadron 2, you should have close to $33,000 in your pocket to spend toward that education. It's not included in your tuition. If you want to go to another company called Tradewinds, he charges as much as $16,000. You're talking about $48,000. So make up your mind. We love you to continue with the professional flight. We have a number of scholarships. The scholarship is still open until April 20th. The scholarship is available to entering freshmen. So please take advantage of the opportunity. We're going to be looking at the applications after May 20th. And we are working very hard with our local airlines, Southwest, SkyWest, American United, to create a pathway for you guys to get some of your trainings through them so you don't have to spend a lot of money. But these are the things that I've been working on, and I have the support of the faculty in here, including Professor Neal.
Yeah.
Any questions for us?
Yeah, Dr. Perez, there were a couple of questions on the chat. Let me just open that up
Okay.
and answer those. Let's see. Can I schedule an appointment with an academic counselor before the freshman orientation? Yeah, so if you wrote my cell number down, give me a call and I can go through that with you in a one-on-one. Okay. I think we covered this one. Does all the time building for instrument commercial need to be done through the affiliate schools? So that's kind of a multifaceted question. If you're training in part 141, then yes, it does, because the flight hours that you need to get a commercial certificate, it's 190 hours of training. And that's your private instrument and commercial all rolled up at the end of the day when you're going for that commercial certificate. It's all part 141 training in the airplanes on their list, on their certificate, and the outside hours don't count. And that's a benefit to part 61 training, is they all count. So flight hours have to be done at the schools, generally speaking. I covered this one. Can I get an appointment? So call my cell on the weekdays. Ben, how's it ranked #1? Okay, so it's the only Cal State system with an aviation school. We also have California Baptist and California Aeronautics University in the state, Arizona State, and is in Arizona. In the Western states, Utah State has a program. There's a community college, couple of community colleges like Orange Coast College, in Southern California, Bend Community College, and then there's a couple of schools in Washington State. So that's the Western states, but California, we're the #1 one. Fourth, as Dr. Perez pointed out, we're 4th in the nation. That puts us behind North Dakota and Ohio State. We were ahead of Embry-Riddle, both Daytona Beach and Prescott, in terms of ranking of the programs. Christian asked a question, do you need a class 1 or class 3 medical prior to start? Here's the advice on that. Technically, to learn to fly, you only need a class 3 medical certificate. That's to get your private pilot certificate. However, I've always told students, and so does Wendy, that you should get a class 1 certificate and keep it the whole time you're doing it. And the reason for that is that if you're planning to be a professional pilot and there's some medical condition that you don't know about that would prevent you, or something that you need to address, then you need to do that early on, so that you can know that you're not spending all this money on flight training for a career that you wouldn't be able to pursue. And so there's the one, you should read the questions out loud. I think we're doing that. Can you use student loans, financial aid to fund flight training? Yes, you can. And in fact, if you talk to our financial aid and scholarship office, they actually do have mechanisms to add to your financial aid for students in the professional flight program. And that being said, I'll point out to you right now, to Dr. Perez periodically will send out emails to all aviation students, and your email will go on the list. And what you see as in your inbox is stuff from the aviation program mailbox. and he'll send out notifications of scholarship opportunities too. And he's going to send those out pretty soon for this upcoming year. But there's a couple of other ones that are not in the department ones. There's a couple of outside organizations. One is the Aero Club of Northern California. They have annual scholarships that San Jose State students routinely win. There's an airport south of San Jose called San Martin Airport. It used to be called South County. And there's an organization there, the South County Airport Pilots Association. They grant a scholarship every year. Last year, they had $5,000 in their scholarship fund, and they only had 2 applicants, and they just split it and gave it to both. This year, they had an infusion of extra money, and so they have an extra $15,000 in their scholarship fund. And I'm hoping that we can get some San Jose State students to apply, because that would certainly be good for flight training money.
Professor Neal, may I just say one thing, because I need to go to the technology program meeting.
Sure.
So yes, I am on campus Monday through Friday. So you're welcome to stop by, not this afternoon. I have other engagements, but you're welcome to come during the week. Anytime after 2 p.m., I'm in the office. I should be around. If I'm not in a meeting, you're welcome to come by, and I would be very happy to talk to you. So regarding a scholarship, last year we gave $73,000 worth of a scholarship. We have one scholarship that is for $10,000 for someone who's going to be in professional flight. So we have all those opportunities. Please contact Professor Neal. As he said, call him on his cell phone during the weekdays, and go ahead and send me emails if you have any question, and please come by the office. Welcome to our program. I hope I'll see you in the program and on campus. Professor Neal, thank you so much. Okay, I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye, Dr. Breath. Hey, Cameron, is that a profile RC plane hanging on your wall?
Yes, my dad built this around 10 years ago. It's an extra 300S.
Nice. Do you fly or RC?
I have not flown in a long time, but yes, I do have experience flying RC plane.
Okay, it can be fun. What I can tell you though is that it's harder to train people to fly RC that are pilots. Pilots are it's a little different. It's a similar set of tasks but different. So pilots take longer to train. It's funny. But okay, back to those questions, just to finish them. The next one that I came to was how much are flight hours? They're going up a little bit right now because of the fuel costs, but generally speaking, a flight hour is around, I think Tradewinds charges $179 an hour for the airplane rental, and that includes fuel. And then flight instructors are about $75 an hour. So that comes out to be about $250 an hour at Tradewinds. Squadron 2 is not quite as bad. They actually have a little different scheme with their instructors. The instructors are independent there, so they schedule through Squadron 2, and they actually are insured through Squadron 2. But they charge their own rate. Some of them give break to San Jose State students, but they're usually in the 65 per hour range, and the planes are around 140 to 150 an hour. So like 225 an hour there. So it is a little bit of a saving. The two flight schools have a little different flair to them. One, Squadron 2 is just different. They go through, they're set up to be an unstaffed office. Everything's automated. So when you go in, there'll be a cipher lock to get in the door. You might be the only one there, and you'll walk in and the automated thing will turn on the lights. You'll get the keys for the airplane out of a machine by logging in. And if it gives you permission to take that, you scheduled it and you're checked out, you can get the keys and go take it. Most of the time, someone is staffed there, but a lot of the staff at Squadron 2 are San Jose State students, and they have to leave for classes. So they'll lock up and go. And during a normal day, there's lots of flight instructors and pilots around, so they don't lock up. But if it's quiet, and if you're flying early in the morning, you might be the first one there. Tradewinds, on the other hand, is always staffed. Someone will be there in uniform, someone who knows what's going on. They'll be there, tell you that what you're supposed to be doing at any given time, and so since they staff it a little more, they charge a little bit more for it. Okay, so there was a question here that says, I'm unsure between choosing flight operations and aviation management. I want to become an air traffic controller. I would say that flight operations would be a better fit for an air traffic controller than aviation management. But I can tell you this, that our grads go out of this program and there are no rules on that. And in terms of if you apply for a job. So I have students that did flight operations or professional flight, and they're working as an airport manager. And I have students who have aviation management degrees who are, or I'd say degree options, who are airline pilots. And so that's the, when I say there's no hard and fast rules about that. There's another question here that says, if I come in with a private, how long can I expect to spend on an instrument in commercial flying 3 to 4 times per week? In a 141 program, the instrument and commercial rating combined takes 120 hours of training. That's the way the syllabus works. So if you do that, say 3 times a week, an average lesson is an hour, but sometimes in the commercial and instrument, you're doing longer cross country. So you might have the occasional flight that, lesson that lasts for 4 hours. But let's just say, they're an average of an hour, it'd be 120. So sounds like 40 weeks. So you could do it in a year if you step with it. One of the problems that students have is 141 programs are not all the same. It's not a cookie cutter arrangement. So if you're flying at Squadron 2 or Trade Winds and you go home to San Diego for the summer, you can't fly at a school down there and have those hours count at Squadron 2 or Trade Winds. Their certificate requires that they do your training, and that's kind of how it works out. So it's possible to do those 2 ratings in under a year. Some students have trouble going out 3 to 4 times a week, and that it's easy to get wrapped up in all the activities at school and say, I'll cancel my lesson this week or one of them this week so I can go to a club meeting of some sort. Ben Delgado asks, what jobs besides being a pilot are available with students choosing operations or aviation management? In the flight operations area, one of the hottest career fields right now is aircraft dispatch. And an aircraft dispatcher is a guy that works for an airline, and that you're in an office environment, but you're managing about 7 flights at any given time. And what that means is you're responsible for most of the things about that flight. So when it's a flight usually originates at some place in the morning, and then like at 6:30 in the morning, that plane is taking off for somewhere. So that's the origination point. And it's going to some other airport, and it has a flight crew on it. So your job would be to make sure that there's a gate, that the airplane is at the gate, that the maintenance logs are done. You'll know how much freight is being carried in addition to passengers and baggage. You'll know what fuel load it is, and you're going to be managing things like the fuel load, like what's the cost of fuel at the airport where the airplane is sitting right now versus what's the cost at the destination. Should we fill up a tanker fuel now and take less freight? And by the way, what flight crew is on that airplane and how many hours have they been flying today? If they just came into that airport on a red-eye flight and they have an hour or 2 of flight time left in their workday, you have to make sure that there's a flight crew at the next airport ready to take over on that airplane. So all of those things combined, and you're doing that for 7 flights. And one flight might end. It might terminate at whatever its final destination of the day is. A typical flight, say, would leave San Jose Airport. Say a Southwest flight would go San Jose, Denver, Midway, Chicago, and then they might go down to Atlanta and park it. And then the next morning, they're going to leave Atlanta and go up to Baltimore, and then starting west, stop in Chicago, Denver, Phoenix, and Los Angeles or San Diego, and then San Jose. And so all of those flights, your job is to make sure there's a gate, there's a flight crew, there's a baggage crew, that there's fuel for the plane, and that you're not paying too much for it. So that's a dispatch job. Average salary in that field is now running at $176,000 a year, and they can't get enough people to do it. Aviation management does the same thing. The people in management can do dispatch, but they can also do airport operations and management, and those are wide open now. So one of the things to look at when, if you go on an airline flight, next time you go on a flight, pay attention to a few things. Think of that flight as a part of a system. The airplane is part of it, the crew that operates it, the baggage handlers, the mechanics that work on the airplane, the people who tow the airplane out and get it ready to start, the gate agents, the people who do ticketing, the baggage handling equipment that has to go out, the fuelers, all that stuff has to work, and so does the gate at the airport, and so does the ramp and the pavement, and safety inspections for taxiways and runways, the air traffic control tower. All of that has to work together as part of a big system. Every one of those career segments is understaffed right now. You guys are coming in to a field that is so wide open that if you want a job when you have your degree, the job will be waiting for you. As it looks like right now, if you want to be a pilot, there's a profile for hiring that looks like the airline industry in the US, just domestic airlines only, will be hiring about 8,000 pilots a year for the next 22 years. And that, as just kind of paint a little different perspective, I was teaching in this program in the 90s and some of my 1992 grads, when they were getting out of school. Can you take a guess at how many pilots United Airlines, or pardon me, it was not United, it was American Airlines hired in 2002? Pardon me, 1992? It was a number less than 8,000. It was 6. So they hired 6 pilots that year. So it was a much more difficult task to get in. They got in that particular year realm. There was a few years running where they had a hiring wave and they had nobody on the retirement path. Very few people were retiring, so they weren't hiring. Right now, I think you guys will bring, and I put this under the, some of the airline management aspects may not be the sharpest tools in the shed. And here's why I think that. Stand by for a second. I'll call him right back. Actually, I need to take that call. Stand by for just. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. So anyway, the career fields for you guys are pretty wide open, and that's kind of where we left off. So I think it's about time to wrap things up. We're a little over time. Do you guys have any questions other than what was in the chat? Oh, there was one other one. CFI. Yeah, so CFI multi-course, we have as one of our elective courses, a CFI Prep course, which is a really, really good course. And it was new 2 semesters ago. They entered, when they have an experimental course, they enter it as Aviation 199. That was 199B. I think that's going to be numbered Aviation 114 now. So that one, and we have a multi-engine prep course, which is kind of unusual because when you do a multi-engine rating, and it's not required in our program, but the multi-engine rating is only flight training, no exam, it's just flight training and a test, but there is some knowledge that we thought would be important. So we introduced a multi-engine prep course, and that can also be used as an elective. So that's kind of a short course. But the 2 are available through our program, but not required. So. Okay, looks like we're paring down on participants, and it's time for taking a break. You guys have some other place you're supposed to go after this one?
I think there's like a freshman engineering Zoom meeting that we have to go to, like at 1 p.m. So
okay, well, why don't you guys break off?
Break.
Yeah, have a lunch break, and don't hesitate to call. Please do it during the weekdays, though. It's a lot easier for me. If I don't answer, leave a message or just call back, but not not right that second. If I'm on the phone with another student or actually in the middle of something, I sometimes can't answer, but I try to. So I will see you guys in the fall, hopefully, and you guys will be taking most likely Aviation 1. I don't teach that class, but I do one of the guest lectures in it. So you guys have a great afternoon, and we'll talk to you later.